have a DC carry permit, or do you have a DC registered firearm? Do you have to carry a firearm for your job? Or are you just traveling through DC on your way somewhere else? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then this video is for you. I'm Morgan Lay, an experienced criminal defense attorney in DC and Maryland, here to tell you what you need to know about where and how to carry and transport a firearm through our nation's capital. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and Markham Law Firm's YouTube channel for more informational videos like this one. First, I'm going to discuss how to transport a firearm in DC when you are just traveling through. Second, I'll discuss where you can possess your firearm if you do not have a permit. And finally, I'll talk about where you are prohibited from carrying your firearm even with a permit. The first thing to understand is that to lawfully possess a firearm in DC outside of your home, place of business, or land that belongs to you, you must have a DC issued carry permit. DC does not have reciprocity with any other state, so your Maryland, Virginia, or out-of-state permits will not help you. I've gotten a lot of business because people didn't understand when, where, or how they can carry their firearms. DC uses the term licensee to refer to someone who has a carry permit. I'm going to use the term carry permit holder and licensee interchangeably throughout this video. If you are just traveling through DC on your way somewhere else, you can travel with a firearm without a DC issued permit if the firearm is stored in the trunk, or if there's no trunk, it must be in a locked container out of arm's reach if inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle. It must be unloaded, no rounds in the chamber, magazines detached, and the ammunition must be stored separately from the firearm. Federal law permits a person to transport a firearm from point A to point B so long as they can lawfully possess the firearm in both point A and point B, and as long as it's stored just as I mentioned above. You can stop for gas and food, but a leisurely lunch at Old Ebbitt Grill is not allowed. Yes, I have represented out-of-state permit holders for having a nice long lunch at Old Ebbitt Grill with their firearms. To possess a firearm in DC without a DC carry permit, the firearm must be registered. You can fill out the PD 219 form through the Metropolitan Police Department. This form is the application for firearms registration certificate. Failure to abide by DC's registration requirements could subject you to criminal penalties for possession of an unregistered firearm, which is a misdemeanor with a maximum penalty of 1 year in jail for a first offense and up to 5 years in jail for a second or subsequent offense. A person must keep their registration certificate available wherever the firearm is stored, kept, or carried. Firearms must be carried concealed. There is no open carry permitted in the District of Columbia. Now here's the fun part. You've got your carry permit, you've taken the necessary courses, submitted the proper applications, and registered your firearm. Even so, there are many areas in DC where you are not permitted to carry your firearm even with a permit and registration certificate. It's a long list, but it's super important for any DC gun owner to understand. Or you may have to call me to represent you. You may not carry a firearm in a building or office occupied by the District of Columbia, its agencies, or its instrumentalities. An instrumentality is defined as a quasi-governmental entity that operates in part with district funds like the DC Water and Sewer Authority. The building and grounds, including any adjacent parking lot of a childcare facility, preschool, public or private elementary or secondary school, or public or private college or university. A hospital where medical or mental health services are the primary services provided. This also applies to medical offices. A jail, a juvenile residential facility, or a halfway house. A polling place while voting is occurring. A public transportation vehicle, including the metro system and its stations. Any premises or part of that premises where alcohol is served or sold and consumed on the premises pursuant to an alcohol license. This prohibition doesn't apply to locations operating under a temporary license or caterer's license or premises with small sample tasting permits. A stadium or arena, a gathering or special event open to the public, provided that no licensee shall be criminally prosecuted unless The organizer or the district has provided notice that firearms are prohibited in advance of the gathering or special event, and signs are posted at the gathering or special event. Or the licensee has been ordered by a law enforcement officer to leave the area of the gathering or special event, and the licensee has not complied with the order. You can't possess a firearm on the public memorials, on the National Mall, and along the tidal basin, or any area where firearms are prohibited under federal law or by a federal agency or entity, including U.S. Capitol buildings and grounds, the White House complex and its grounds, up to and including the curb adjacent to the sidewalks touching the roadways of the area bounded by Constitution Avenue Northwest, 15th Street Northwest, H Street Northwest, and 17th Street Northwest. The U.S. Naval Observatory and its fence line, including the area from the perimeter of its fence up to and including to the curb of the adjacent sidewalks touching the roadway of Observatory Circle from Calvert Street Northwest to Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, and around Observatory Circle to the far corner of Observatory Lane, within up to 1,000 feet of a dignitary or high-ranking government official moving under the protection of D.C. or federal law enforcement within an area designated by the chief of police or their designee. But no one can be criminally prosecuted unless the law enforcement agency provides notice of the designated area by the presence of signs, law enforcement vehicles or officers acting as a perimeter or other means to make the designated area protection obvious. The district or federal government has provided notice prohibiting the carrying of pistols along a designated route or in a designated area in advance of the event, if possible, and by signs posted along a route or in a designated area. Or the licensee has been ordered by a law enforcement officer to leave the designated area, and the licensee has not complied with the order. Within up to 1,000 feet of a public demonstration, provided that no licensee shall be criminally prosecuted unless the law enforcement agency provides notice of the designated area by the presence of signs, law enforcement vehicles, or officers acting as a perimeter or other means to make the designated area of the demonstration obvious. The district or federal government has provided notice prohibiting the carrying of pistols along or within a demonstration route or designated area in advance of the event, if possible, and by posting signs along a demonstration route or designated area. Or the licensee has been ordered by a law enforcement officer to leave the designated area, and the licensee has not complied with the order. Or any prohibited location or circumstance that the chief determines by rule, provided that for spontaneous circumstances, no one shall be criminally prosecuted unless the licensee has notice of the prohibition and has failed to comply. Yes, it's a long list, but we're not quite finished. A person may not carry a firearm on private residential or other private property unless permission to carry a concealed firearm has been granted in advance of entry onto the property. A carry permit holder may not carry in a church, synagogue, mosque, or other place where people regularly assemble for religious worship unless posted signs grant permission or the owner or authorized agent grants permission in advance of entry onto the property, provided that such places can't authorize the carrying of concealed firearms where services are being conducted. If a carry permit holder approaches a prohibited location or circumstance in a vehicle, they should immediately secure the firearm in a trunk or a locked container, unloaded and stored separately from the ammunition, or immediately leave the area if they are not traveling in a vehicle. You are not in violation of the law if your firearm is stored, as I mentioned previously, while picking up or dropping off a student or child at school or daycare. As gun laws are rapidly changing in some parts of the country, it's important to stay up to date by consulting with an experienced DC criminal defense lawyer if you have questions about where you can carry or how you can carry your firearm. Again, I'm attorney Morgan Lay. I hope you found this video useful. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.